I'm Aislinn Green, and this is Travel Tales by Afar. Every week, we hear stories of life-changing travel from poets, scientists, authors, entrepreneurs, and so many more. And this week, we're going to hear about a family's musical pilgrimage to a small town in Italy with a big reputation. Tess Taylor will be our guide. She's a poet and a gardener. Her latest book is a poetry anthology called Leaning Toward the Light, Poems for Gardens and the Hands That Tend Them. She's also a musician and a parent, and as you'll hear, her 12-year-old son, Bennett, has been fascinated by the violin since he was 3 years old. So last summer, she took Bennett, her daughter Emmeline, and her husband Taylor to Cremona, Italy, one of the most famous places in the country for violin-making or luthiery. They found outdoor concerts and artisans and ancient bell towers, so they returned home with many musical memories, as well as something that will, we hope, last a lifetime.
It's about 5 p.m. on a mild June afternoon just after the solstice. As if on cue, the streets surrounding Cremona's main piazza fill with lovers and friends, wanderers in search of an afternoon gelati or Aperol spritz. This might happen in any small town in Italy, but today the cobblestone alley we've turned onto is filled with something else. Music. As my family and I walk up the tiny diagonal Via Ceresole, heading towards Cremona's central cathedral, we see that our route is nearly blocked by the presence of an enormous black baby grand piano. Sitting on a small bench are not one but two pianists pounding out first a Beethoven sonata, then some Spanish folk tunes, and then a spirited rendition of a Brahms duet. Notes ricochet off terracotta walls. A crowd fills the alley, and we pause too. High above at the end of the street, the sun glints off the rust-colored terrazzo of Cremona, the soaring bell tower of Cremona's cathedral. It's a gorgeous moment in this city, which I am learning is bursting at its seams with song. To be sure, we knew we were coming to Cremona for music, for violin music in particular. We'd been making our way up Italy's Adriatic coast. We'd examined mosaics and visited Dante's tomb in Ravenna. We ate astounding ravioli in Emilia-Romagna. And now we've crossed over into Cremona, a small bustling town in the south of Lombardy, between Venice and Milan. Stunning pop-up piano concert aside, Cremona's longest claim to fame is as a center for violin making. Cremona is where Andrea Amati lived in the 16th century. He was the violin maker most credited with giving the instruments in the violin family, the cello, the viola, the violin, their recognizable contemporary forms. A century later, Antonio Stradivari was born here. He made instruments of legendary beauty that haunt audiences to this day. To many violin aficionados, Amati and Stradivarius violins still offer Platonic ideals of violin sound. Cremona has a number of Stradivarius violins in its violin museum. And even better, it offers a daily concert where you can actually hear a Stradivarius played. I've been wanting to visit Cremona since I read about it maybe 5 years ago. At that time, my son Bennett was about 7. He'd already been playing the violin since he was 3, and he fell in love with it on a different trip. We'd been in Nova Scotia listening to traditional fiddle music. After seeing those fiddlers, he asked for a violin every day for so long that I finally relented. It turned out that Bennett knew what he wanted. He's got a clever ear, a fast way with songs. He's the sort of kid who hears a folk song or movie soundtrack and can almost immediately noodle it out. Bennett's almost 12 now, and I can't remember a day when he wasn't tinkering with something. The theme song to a movie, a folk tune or hymn, bluegrass tunes, and increasingly complicated classical pieces. My 8-year-old daughter Emmeline started young as well, as if she just assumed that violin was a necessary part of one's childhood. It's been fascinating to follow the kids down the violin rabbit hole. I too studied music seriously. I sang in a serious chorus as a young person, and once I thought I'd be an opera singer. Even so, I never played an instrument. Now the violin, something neither my husband Taylor or I knew much about when Bennett first asked for one, has become a constant companion in our lives. We've grown fascinated by the nuances of fingering and bowing. We nerd out about bow hair and strings. We love the varied ways that violins sing, too. One of the delights of this trip is that town by town we've been celebrating how one craft, one art form, can indelibly shape a place. The legendary mosaics we just saw in Ravenna date from the 6th century, but mosaic making and mosaic schools persist there to this day. It's like this in Cremona as well. Violin maker Andrea Amati died 500 years ago and Stradivari passed 300 years ago. Yet Cremona is still a critical center to build, trade, study, and discuss violins. The art of making violins in small studios persists here. For centuries, Cremonese craftspeople built the instruments that made their way to the musicians of almost every royal court. These days, there are violin makers and factories worldwide. There's even a very good violin maker down the street from our house in California. Despite that, the slow art of building violins by hand continues undiminished in Cremona. There are at least 500 masters and apprentices who build violins, violas, and cellos from scratch. You see their shops down almost every alleyway. The town is as lined with violin studios as Sonoma, California is with wineries. This afternoon, we're on our way to meet one of them. Robert Gasser, a master craftsman, is going to show us his workspace, his violins in progress. We walk from the central piazza up a quiet, sunlit street where Robert's shop occupies a narrow, bright first-floor studio. Violin molds hang on the yellow walls, and fine tools and brushes are scattered on work tables. On the walls, the partially carved wooden bodies of unfinished instruments hang alongside ribs and molds of instruments to come. The kids are fascinated, as am I. We admire the various jars of resins in one hutch. There are piles of shavings everywhere. The dust smells good, says Bennett. We feel the accreted centuries of craft. Each violin takes about a month to build, and Robert, an expressive-looking Swiss-born man, has been building violins month by month for more than 40 years. The first thing that he reminds us is that he is not a violin maker, but more properly, a luthier. The word reminds me that not so long ago, violins didn't exist yet, and most stringed instruments were called lutes. That word, as well as the lute itself, descend from the Arabic stringed instrument l'oud. The oud is gourd-shaped with frets. Its earliest forms date to Mesopotamia, and from there it traveled with both Arab and Jewish tribes. Some oud were bowed, others were not. At some point, the shape of some of them would have become more violin-like. Even so, Robert points out that amid many migrations, we don't know precisely when in the late Renaissance the shape of the violin we now recognize was born. Robert tells us that some historians imagine that the violin began with the Jewish musicians who were banished from the Spanish court of Ferdinand and Isabella in 1492. In the 15th and 16th centuries, Cremona would have been at a crossroads, switching between the influences and power of Venice and Spain. Perhaps these expelled court musicians fled and resettled in Cremona, perhaps closeting their identities to pass as Catholics. Perhaps one of them taught Amati. Whatever the story, in Robert's shop, for the first of what will be many times this week, I'm reminded that the violin is a creature of long travel across the globe, across time. We've only been in Cremona a few hours, but already I have the uncanny sense of being on the trade route of a mystery. I think about how instruments accompany our lives as well as our songs, how they journey with us so we can pass their music down. Do you know what this is? Robert interrupts my reverie by lifting the core of a tree trunk and showing it to the kids. This is where the violin begins. These are sections of spruce trees Robert has carefully sourced. He even harvested some of them himself. We all peer at a stumpy triangular cut of spruce he harvested from a German forest in the 1970s, shortly after he began his life as a full-time violin maker. He explains that blocks like this must sometimes cure and age for decades. Only then will he pick one out and begin to sculpt it with the many tools that line the desk and walls. We admire those tools that lie splayed and hung around him, finger planes, clamps, gouges, chisels. He picks up a plane and, like a master chef dicing an onion, casually hews a few shavings off the body of a violin in progress. I don't cut my own trees anymore, Robert tells us, adding that it was important for him to learn to read trees, to listen to them, to see their grain. He talks about learning to knock on the wood, not unlike the way a chef might tap a watermelon for ripeness. He talks about learning to listen and imagine echoes, reverberation, how each segment of a tree might ring. He explains that the classic Cremonese violin he makes is a combination of maple and spruce. The hard maple creates the structure of the neck and the hard echoing wall of the back, and the softer spruce vibrates with the song. The oldest violins are held together with rabbit bone glue, their strings made with animal guts. A well-cared-for violin, like a wine, deepens with age, opening in the presence of its own vibration. One fact particularly strikes us, that the unglued post which inwardly supports the body and helps the whole to vibrate is called the sound post, at least in English. But in French and Italian, this critical piece which allows the resonance of song is called the soul. Each violin has a soul. A soul is what allows the whole to ring. That just feels so true, says Bennett. Violins do have souls. He is rapt. Now something surprising happens. Robert puts down the violin he's been tinkering on while he talks to us and offers Bennett the chance to play some finished violins. There's a very fine one he's made for the professional market and a special one that he crafted with a student he's been teaching luthiery. We stand in the studio in the late afternoon sun, hearing Bennett play a few scales and a bit of The Swan by Camille Saint-Saëns. Bennett plays each a couple of times on the violin. He's absorbed. This one has a robust sound, he says of the student violin, suddenly focused, with the far-off look of a connoisseur in his eyes. We linger in the sunlit store. Both the boy and the violin are young, although the city, the songs, and the craft are far older. To make a violin is an act of hope for the future, Robert says. You're making something you hope will last beyond anyone who might play it now. Somehow, at his urging, we leave with the student-made violin in tow to practice on while we're here this week. Bennett seems nervous, terrified, delighted, and proud all at once. Outside, the light is golden. After buying apricots, eggs, prosciutto, and melons for tomorrow's breakfast, we head home to change and head out again. We've arrived in the middle of the city's annual Monteverdi Festival, and we have tickets for a number of rather wonderful €10 concerts held in the courtyards of palazzi around town. That evening, there's a concert that reimagines Renaissance music as jazz. The next morning, there's a Baroque soloist playing in the city's violin museum. By afternoon, after some well-deserved pizza, we're back in a palace courtyard hearing 3 tenors singing madrigals together with a lute. The concerts are about an hour each in such lovely settings that it's easy to bring kids and daydream a bit. Bennett delights in watching one of the tenors play something like a zither. Emmeline draws pictures of fantastic instruments in her notebook.
The new year brings new health goals and wealth goals. Protecting your identity is an important step. Your info is in endless places that could expose you to identity theft, leading to lost funds. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Resolve to make identity health and wealth part of your New Year's goals with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
The next day, we make our way to the Town Art Museum. Like everything in Cremona, it's lovely, manageable, relatively untouristed. It's got one haunting Caravaggio, which is just enough to linger on with attention and delight, and several upstairs rooms devoted to unusual historic instruments. There are fat-bellied lutes that troubadours would have used to sing old madrigals. We see pochette, or pocket violins, used by dance instructors to accompany their pupils in an era before recorded music. There are posh-looking violas and hurdy-gurdies and antique miniature guitars. I lose track of the variations. It's amazing to watch the shapes change from a carved-out gourd with a neck to this wavy thing with a bow, says Bennett. Emmeline is zoning in on lacy patterns and beautiful shapes of a blonde guitar with ebony and ivory inlay. Her pictures seem to have gotten more intricate, even in these last few days. I can see why. Even in their silent glass cases, I feel the instruments around us calling our attention to some sprightly musical conversation. I imagine delicate runs of notes, long somber tones. I imagine the players traveling through time, carrying a bit of song inside them, ready to send that song into the world so we can all laugh, dance, lament, or love. Beside me, Bennett mimes rocking out beside an old lyre, one with strings between enormous horn-shaped spires. After the museum, we sit in the shadow of the terrazzo. I have read that it is the third highest brick bell tower in the world if you're interested in rating the height of brick bell towers, which I'm not. Instead, we all admire the way the antique clock is deep blue and painted with the enormous signs of the zodiac. It's also Italian, but not at all harried. I realize I am delighted not to be in Florence or Venice or Rome, but here in Cremona, whose pace allows us to attend to this focused pilgrimage. My husband and I have also made the happy discovery that at 5 p.m. in Cremona, when you order an Aperol Spritz, it appears with a few slices of pizza and a bowl of potato chips. This combination of drinks and snacks keeps us mellow. Pigeons wheel through the square. We all wonder why there aren't more stateside piazzas where you can enjoy Aperol Spritz and potato chips in the shade of a magnificent cathedral. After our afternoon feast, we see one more a cappella group. It's a quartet of singers performing madrigals by Orlando di Lasso. The kids are entranced. Each song is a little scene, dramatic, sometimes quarrelsome, formed in little trills and chases. I never knew music could be so funny, says Emmeline. I know, says Bennett. Even though it's in Italian, we get the jokes. I realize that we all feel nourished by this city, by the ongoingness of song. That evening, over dinner at the lovely classic restaurant Il Violino, our talk turns to the strange task ahead of us. We are due to return Bennett's borrowed violin to Robert. Yet somehow I don't want to. I realize that somehow I'm hoping we will purchase this student-made violin Bennett has been playing. On the one hand, I did not come here to go violin shopping. We weren't systematic. We hadn't expected to do such a thing. It's more extravagant than I had planned to be. On the other hand, there's a beautiful clear sound rising out of it, and there's a precision to each pitch, and it's bringing us joy. And even though he doesn't have the sheet music, even though his memory of the piece is imperfect, it is lovely to hear Bennett exploring the swan, working out the resonance of the ascending notes. I realize I'm hopeful that he'll carry this time into the future, too. On our last morning, we're standing in our rather Spartan rental Airbnb apartment, deliberating. Bennett has been playing a few final scales, a bit of Bach in G minor. There's so much space in the sound, Bennett says. I feel like I can really hear each note. He's not asking us for the violin. In fact, he seems aware that something like this is a big responsibility for someone who's not yet a teenager. Taylor and I think for a moment. I have a sense that if we don't do this now, I'll regret it. We make a decision. We'll hold the violin here, and Taylor will come back for it in the fall when he has to travel to Europe again, and we have less luggage. We make arrangements to purchase the violin. It's actually quite reasonably priced among Cremona's many extremely valuable instruments, more than a factory-made violin stateside, but surely in a reasonable range for a serious young player. I know I don't know enough about violins to know if this is the right choice. I have a pang. What if it's too serious a thing to give a young person who hasn't made up their mind about music? Is this the right thing to do? As it happened, as soon as we were home from Italy, Bennett fell and broke his wrist in 2 places. It wasn't an easy recovery. Even walking and running were painful for a month. He couldn't write for 2 months. He couldn't play the violin at all for nearly 4 months. For a moment, it wasn't even clear that his wrist would heal properly, which became a heavy worry we all bore. Yet the time seemed to give him a chance to reflect and to think about what he wanted and hoped for. When Taylor picked up the Cremona violin that November, Bennett was finally out of rehab, hungry to lean into new music. The violin arrived home just at the moment he could celebrate being better at last. All winter, far from Cremona, I hear the new violin open under Bennett's playing. He plays Bach and Corelli, figuring out new ways to shift his fingers, new ways to leap and land. We can all hear how this violin's high notes are lighter and more sprightly than the fiddle he'd begun on. This violin is like a new voice, Bennett says. I can sing new songs with it. I ask Bennett what he remembers from those days in Italy. He tells me that he remembers thinking about the variations and possibility in instruments, about songs that range from strumming to bowing, about the many shapes of the music that people have always seemed to need to carry with them. He's also curious about the rich beauty of the sounds we heard last summer. I want to learn Italian, Bennett says one day. I want to know how to use a Baroque bow. I don't know the path of my child or of his instrument, but I feel so honored to be in the unfolding present of his songs. I feel like I've given Bennett something he can carry with him into whatever future he chooses. I feel like I've given him a way of accompanying his life. A violin is a way to practice hearing, Bennett says. It's a way of making music everywhere.
That was Tess Taylor, who continues to hear the sound of Bennett's Cremona violin every day. You can hear more about that evolution, as well as her thoughts on Cremona in my YouTube chat with her. We'll share that link in the show notes, as well as links to her books and website and some additional Cremona inspiration. Next week, we'll be back with a story about crossing the United States on a bike with no food or money.
So, just like a lot of other Americans, I've been feeling all the tension and division in the country and the last couple of years, and honestly, it was causing some anger. And in some ways, I wanted to be able to channel that anger and try to create something positive. So I thought, well, what if I were to ride my bicycle across the country? Because that would give me a unique perspective of, the different communities that I ride through and the people that I meet. And then I came up with the idea of, well, what if I were to do it with no food or money?
Ready for more travel tales? Visit afar.com/podcast and be sure to follow us on Instagram and X. We're at Afar Media. If you enjoyed today's exploration, I hope you'll come back for more great stories. Subscribing makes this so easy. You can find Travel Tales by Afar on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. And be sure to rate and review the show. It helps other travelers find it. This has been Travel Tales, a production of Afar Media. The podcast is produced by Aislinn Green and Nikki Galteland. Music composed and produced by Strike Audio. Everyone has a travel tale. What's yours?